Good morning. We have learned in the last class about the asynchronous data transfer, right? And the next topic is modes of transfer. The data transfer to and from peripherals may be handled in one of these three possible ways. That is the data transfer between the central computer and the IO devices. Okay, transfer between the central processing unit and the IO devices may be handled in these three ways. One is programmed IO. Okay, the first method is programmed IO and interrupt initiated IO and then direct memory access. Okay, we'll study about all these different methods in detail, okay, for input-output transfer. So first about this program IO, programmed input-output. So we have input-output instructions in the program, and upon execution of that instructions, the data transfer is done. Okay, so that is why it is called programmed IO. Okay, input-output instructions are executed, and because of that execution, the transfer is done. So here, the transfer is done as a result of IO instructions written in the computer program. Okay, example, you have a input instruction. Okay, there is a program and there are some initial statements and there is an input statement. Okay, there is an instruction input. This is to, the meaning of this is to get the input from the input device. Okay, the central computer has to take the input from the user through the input device for some processing. So when this instruction is executed, the transfer is initiated. Okay, what the CPU does, CPU execute this program, and when this instruction comes, okay, when this input instruction is executed, in C program, no, you write it as scanf statement, right? The scanf statement is to read data for processing. So when this statement, when this input instruction is executed, the CPU get the data, right? CPU transfer the data from the input device and use it for further processing, okay, based on the processing steps given in the instructions. So this way it is initiated. The transfer is initiated by the program, okay, by the instruction. And once, okay, the transfer is initiated, CPU stays in the program loop until the IO unit indicates that it is ready for transfer. Okay, for let's take this instruction only, input instruction. So for taking input, okay, into the computer, what the CPU does, CPU, okay, go to fetch data from the input device. Okay, so we have an input device here. Data need to be transferred to the CPU, okay, for processing. Okay, that is the execution of this particular instruction input, okay, that is given in the program. This is programmed IO, okay. So here, when this instruction is executed, CPU has to fetch data, okay, read data from the input device. When there is a transfer between these two devices, a peripheral and CPU, CPU is a faster device and input device is a slower device. Okay, so when the input device is ready to transfer, it places, there we will have an interface in the middle, right? That connects these two devices. So when the input device is ready to transfer data, it places its data in the input register, okay, and set the flag. Okay, let's say it is INF, input flag. Okay, set this as 1. So when this flag is set, CPU knows that there is data. Okay, this input is available in the register, input register, and the CPU can now read the input data. Okay, so here the CPU has to finish the transfer. Until then, it has to wait in this loop only. Okay, it has to stay in this program loop until the input device is ready to transfer data. Okay, so it has to keep checking this flag, input flag. If it is set 1, means the data is, device is ready and the data can be read. It reads the data. And again, the input has to be initiated, right? The input device has to send the next byte of data. Okay, so here the CPU keep waiting, keep checking this flag bit. So this is a time consuming process. Since this transfer keep the processor busy needlessly. Okay, CPU is meant for doing some useful process in the computer. Okay, instead of doing that, now CPU is kept idle, just waiting for this input device to send the data. Okay, so that is a disadvantage here. Okay, let me give you an example. Okay, so you will understand. Let's consider that you are creating a Word document. Okay, so you are working on jobs of creating a Word document, and in the middle of this process, you want to refer something. Okay, so what you do, you open an internet page. Okay, you open Google, and okay, you type something. Okay, whatever you want to search for. Okay, you type and the internet page starts loading. Okay, because of our your internet connection, the page is not loading. So what you will do, you will wait for the page to load. Okay, because you want to know this information from this web page. Okay, so the time you are waiting here, okay, you stopped your work. Okay, you came to this page and it made you wait there. So the time you are waiting here, you're not doing any work. Yeah, that is worth doing, but you are just waiting. You are just waiting for the page to load. Okay, it is the same thing here. The CPU, okay, CPU, instead of doing the other job, it is made to wait for this input device to send data. So here, in the example I gave you, instead of you waiting for the page to load, okay, to get the information, if there is a mechanism, okay, if your computer, okay, allows you to continue with the job, continue with making of your Word document, okay, and if the computer will inform you when the page is ready, instead of just sitting and waiting for it to load and get the information. If there is a way to know when the page is loaded, let's assume that the page pops up. Okay, the internet page pops up. Okay, so that you can finish that. So then you don't have to worry about this page to load. You can just keep doing your job. Okay, the same way here, instead of making the CPU to wait for this input device to send data, if the input device can send a signal to CPU saying that it is ready. Okay, so until then the CPU can do some other useful process, okay, than waiting here. Okay, so that signal, the input, when the device is ready, the signal it sends is called interrupt, because this interrupt from the process what CPU is doing, and it takes this, okay, control to read the data. Okay, that this interrupt initiates the transfer. Okay, so that is what is the next method, interrupt initiated IO. Okay, in the earlier one we have learned is programmed IO. It is initiated by the program. Okay, the instruction written in the program, like input is an instruction. So this lead the CPU to read data, right? Read data from the input device. So the CPU start reading, and instead of the CPU waiting, checking the flag, okay, and wasting the time, it can be allowed to complete its process. Okay, do the process, and when the input is ready, the device will inform or send a signal to the CPU. So that is interrupt initiated IO. So when the interrupt comes, CPU stops the process, what it is doing, and it goes to serve the device. So when the interface determines that the device is ready for the data transfer, it generates an interrupt request to the computer. So upon detecting the signal, the CPU momentarily stops the task it is processing. Okay, it may be busy with some other process. So upon receiving the interrupt signal from the input device, it stops what it is doing and branches to a service program to process the IO transfer, and then returns to the task it was originally performing. Okay, so CPU is working on a process. Okay, there is a program here. Okay, that is stored in memory. So instruction by instruction, the CPU is executing. So let's say it is at address. This is 2000. This is a current instruction. And here, when the interrupt signal is detected, input device, when it is ready, it sends the interrupt signal to the CPU. Okay, CPU is executing the program. Okay, so it sends the interrupt signal to CPU. So CPU stops executing this and it returns to, it branches to this particular location where the interrupt service routine. Okay, what is this service program? Interrupt service routine. Okay, there in memory, we will have in some other location the interrupt service routine loaded. Okay, let's say it is starting at address 3000. So here the control will go to this particular location to execute these instructions. Okay, in our case, here input device is giving the interrupt to CPU. So when the flag is set, automatically the CPU is interrupted. So upon receiving the interrupt, CPU stops its process, what it is doing, and it jumps to the service routine. Okay, interrupt service routine. Interrupt service routine is the transferring, here what instructions this service routine will have. The instructions that help, that transfer data from the input device to CPU. Okay, so that is done. And once these instructions in the interrupt service routine are executed, we will have a return statement. Okay, generally the last statement of this routine would be return. So it returns, the control returns to the place where the CPU was earlier, before coming to this particular set of instructions. Okay, it is the next address, because if this is the current instruction, okay, let's say this is instruction 1, 2, and instruction 3. Instruction 3 is our next instruction. So PC would be having this value, right, initially. Let's say it is 2001. And to execute, when interrupt at this time, during the execution of I2, instruction 2, CPU was interrupted, okay, by the input device. So it stops this and it has to branch to this particular address. How this branching is done? PC is loaded with this 3000, okay, the branching address. We call this 2001 as a return address, okay, and this is the 3000 is the branching address. So the PC will be loaded with this branching address, and 2001, this return address need to be stored in memory. Okay, we have learned already the return address when the CPU has to, when the control has to branch to execute some other part of the program. Okay, it has to save the return address. It can be saved in one of the memory location, or in the processor register, or in memory stack, right? Okay, so this PC is stored. What is currently there in program counter is stored. Okay, so that once the interrupt service routine is executed, the control can return back to this particular location. Okay, so this way it branches to this interrupt service routine and finish that execution. Okay, so then this is served, right? The input that interrupted the CPU. Okay, it got its service done. So this type of IO transfer, okay, here, transfer is initiated by the interrupt. Okay, so this kind of transfer we call interrupt initiated IO, as this is initiated by the interrupt signal that is sent by the IO device. And the third type is direct memory access. We discussed here CPU, the transfer is done between the CPU and the IO devices, right? Transfer is between CPU. It may be, okay, in both the ways. It may be from CPU to the IO device, or it may be taking the input from the input device. So the transfer is done between the IO device and CPU. CPU stores the data, okay, that it receives from the input device temporarily, and finally it has to be transferred to memory, right? The data need to be stored in memory. Okay, this is done by, so here if suppose receiving, okay, let's talk about this, the input, CPU receive input from the input device, okay. So this is done by input instruction, okay, execution of input instruction in programmed IO. And then CPU to store the data in memory, okay, the instruction executed is store instruction. Okay, so a sequence of instructions are executed to store. Finally, the data is going to be stored in memory or temporarily for some time in CPU registers, okay, until the execution of the instructions are done. And this direct memory access, okay, here interface transfers data into and out of memory unit, okay, through the memory bus. It's not between the CPU and the other devices. It is directly to memory, okay. So we call it as direct memory access. Data is accessed directly from memory and data is transferred directly into memory, okay. But this transfer is initiated by the central processing unit. Okay, so CPU's job is to initiate the transfer by supplying the interface with the starting address of the starting location in memory where the data is to be stored. Okay, so it supplies that information. Okay, and it initiates the transfer. Okay, and the number of words needed to be transmitted. All these are controlled by the CPU. Okay, but the data is transferred directly into memory. So this type of transfer is direct memory access. Okay, we will discuss about this direct memory access in detail. Okay, later we are going to now learn about all these three types of three modes of transfer: programmed IO, interrupt initiated IO, and direct memory access. Programmed IO is initiated by the instructions. Okay, so it is called programmed IO. Means the input output transfer is initiated by the program, by the instructions in the program. And interrupt initiated IO, okay, here the input output transfer is initiated by the interrupt signals, okay, that is sent by the devices. And direct memory access, okay, here it is different from other in a way that the access data is accessed or data transfer is directly done between memory and other devices, okay, peripherals. So it is direct memory access. So here we have this first mode of transfer, the programmed IO. Okay, it is initiated by the instruction. The input-output transfer is initiated by the instruction. So here this shows the data transfer. Okay, it is an example data transfer from IO device through an interface to the CPU. We have an IO device. Okay, so data transfer that is done from the IO device to the CPU through an interface. Okay, we have in the middle between CPU and IO device, we have an interface. So how this transfer is done? When there is an instruction, okay, that instruct the CPU to transfer data from the input device. The input device loads the data in the IO bus. Okay, IO bus, input output bus carries the input output information. So the IO device load the data in the bus, and it also initiates the data valid signal. What for the signal is initiated? To inform the CPU, okay, the receiver or the interface that is in the middle, that, okay, to inform this interface that there is data available in the IO bus. It places the data in the IO bus and it enables this signal, data valid control. It's a control signal enabled by the input device. The source is IO device here. What this interface does, it has to now read the data that is placed in the IO bus. Okay, so interface read the data into the data register. It has a temporary register, data register. So it reads it into data register and set this flag as 1. Okay, means there is data available here. Okay, when the flag is set to 1, that means, okay, there is data in the data register. Okay, and it also enables, this interface enables the data accepted. Okay, data accepted control signal to inform the IO device that it has accepted the data. Okay, data is received here. What is this method of transfer? We have learned it. Okay, the source places the data and initiates the or enables the data valid signal, and the destination receives the data and enables data accepted signal. What is this method of transfer? What is this control called in asynchronous transfer? We have discussed just 2 days back. Asynchronous data transfer. You can refer your notes and tell me. Handshake, very good. Okay, so here this is handshake method of handling the asynchronous data transfer. Correct? The input device places the data in the IO bus and initiates the data valid signal. And once it is accepted, the interface here initiates the data accepted signal. And this stays enabled. This data accepted signal stays enabled until the CPU receives the data from the data register. Okay, now what the CPU has to do? It has to read the data that is there in data register. So it checks the status register. Okay, checks this flag. If it is 1, means it can read the data. Okay, there is data available in the data register. So the CPU enables this IO read. Okay, and the data is placed. The interface places the data in the data bus, and that is read by the CPU. Okay, and once the data is read by the CPU, this data accepted signal is disabled by the interface. Okay, the interface, because now the data register is free. It is available now for receiving the next data byte. The IO device can send the next byte of data. Okay, so at this time, when the data register is free, when the data that is available in the data register is received by the CPU, okay, it is stored in CPU. Now it disables this data accepted signal. Okay, so now the IO device, when this is disabled, when the data accepted signal is disabled, the IO device understands that the data is received completely. So it can transfer the next byte of data. Yeah, this is what we are recollecting here, the handshake method. Okay, the source unit places the data in the data bus and it initiates the data valid signal. And once this data is accepted, the receiver destination unit initiates the data accepted signal. Okay, so once this is activated, this is enabled, the source deactivates this data valid and it removes the data from the line. Okay, but it will not transfer, the source will not transfer the next byte of data until this is disabled. Data accepted line is disabled by the destination. Okay, so when the destination is ready to receive the other next data, it disables this. Okay, data accepted, so that now source it turns to see disable the data accepted. This is done by the destination. Now it is ready to accept data. Okay, it goes to the initial state, so the source can transfer the data. Okay. So here the transfer is done this way in programmed IO method. Okay, when the instruction is executed. Okay, when the instruction executed is to read some data from the input device or to transfer data to output device, this type of transfer, input-output transfer is done. And the next is interrupt initiated IO, the second mode of transfer. This method uses the interrupt facility. How the transfer is done here, when the flag is set, okay, when the IO device is ready, it sets the flag. So when the flag is set, the computer is momentarily interrupted from the processing with the current program. Okay, the CPU stops what it is doing to take care of the IO transfer. Now there are two methods of, okay, we have discussed this, right? CPU stops what it is doing and it moves to execute the interrupt service routine. Now to execute this interrupt service routine, we need the branch address, right? Branch address is the starting address of the interrupt service routine in memory. Okay, the control has to be taken to this address so that it can start executing, the CPU can start executing these instructions in the interrupt service routine. Now these branching, the branching address can be chosen in two ways. Okay, two methods for choosing this branch address of a service routine are non-vectored interrupt and vectored interrupt. Okay, non-vectored interrupt is assigning a fixed location in memory for the branch address. Okay, always in memory, a particular location is fixed. So when there is an interrupt service routine to be executed, the control directly goes to that fixed location. Okay, one particular location in memory is assigned for the interrupt service routine, okay, as a branch address. So whenever there is an interrupt, the control directly jumps to the CPU knows, right, where is the ISR, because it is a fixed location always. This type of interrupt is non-vectored interrupt. And the second method is vectored interrupt. In vectored interrupt, there won't be a fixed branch address. The branch address need to be supplied by the interrupt source. Okay, interrupt source is the device that interrupts the CPU. Okay, in our earlier case, we have seen that input device. Okay, when the input device is ready to send the data, it sends the interrupt signal to CPU. Okay, so here this is the interrupt source. Okay, so when this interrupt signal is sent, it also sends the branch address. What is this branch address? Address is this branch address is the location in memory where the interrupt service routine is stored. Okay, to serve this interrupt, CPU has to execute this particular routine that is stored in this branch address. Okay, so here in this vectored interrupt, the interrupt source supplies the branch address. In different memory locations, the service routine will be stored, and the device that initiates the interrupt, okay, the interrupt source supplies a branch address. So that branch address we call as interrupt vector. Okay, interrupt vector is the branch address that is supplied by the interrupt source. And here, if now in this case, CPU, the central processing unit is connected to one device, right, input. So whenever a particular interrupt comes, the CPU knows that this is the device. Okay, the input device is the one that has sent the interrupt. Okay, so there is no selection between devices need to be done. It can serve, the CPU can stop executing what it is doing and take care of this interrupt. Okay, it finishes the service routine and return back to the process what it was doing. Okay, so when let's consider a case, there are many devices connected to CPU. Okay, and all the devices are allowed to initiate interrupts. There is device 1, device 2, okay, device 3, and device 4. Okay, this way there are many devices are connected, and all of these devices are allowed to interrupt the CPU at any time. Okay, and consider a case that 2 or 3 devices simultaneously send interrupt requests to CPU. CPU cannot execute, or CPU cannot service all these devices at a time. These devices send these interrupts simultaneously to CPU. Okay, so now the CPU's job is to choose which particular interrupt to service first. Okay, so it has to assign to use some method. It has to use some method to find which particular interrupt. Okay, out of there are 3 interrupts arriving at the same time to CPU. Interrupt 1, 2, and 3. So the CPU need to decide which one to serve first. Our example, you are working on a Word document, okay, creating a Word document, and you are waiting for a page to load, okay, and your computer is using an interrupt method. Like you can work in your Word document, your job you can do, okay, instead of waiting for the page to load, okay, you can leave it to work at the background. Okay, and when the page finish loading, that page will pop up. So you will know that the page is loaded. Okay, you can finish what you want to do there. If there is one page, if you have kept one page open, it pops up and you finish and you carry out with what you are doing. If there are many pages, you have kept many pages open. No, at a time, okay, you got the connection stable. So all the pages finish downloading and you are informed that all the pages are loaded. Okay, so which particular page you will finish first? Which one you will choose first to finish? You will have a page that has important information. Only after finishing that, you can proceed with the other process. Okay, if there is such a page, then you will finish that first, right? You will choose the page. There are all the pages finished. Okay, now you have to finish referring them and continue your job of creating the document based on that information. So which particular page you will read first? The page you want the most, right? That has important information using which you can complete your process faster. Or it may be like that depends on you. Or you may think, okay, there some pages may take a lot of time. Okay, so instead of sitting, leaving all this process, instead of sitting with that page, okay, I will finish all the other pages that take less time. Okay, so you will prefer to finish those less time taking jobs first, so that you can close that, and only the few pages that takes a lot of time will be left and you can finish it slowly. Okay, so that depends on you, which one you choose. The same way here, when there are many interrupt, signal comes from different devices, the CPU has to choose, okay, which particular device to serve. Okay, that is done by this. Okay, this method is called priority interrupt. It is a vectored interrupt. The device that gives the signal, interrupt signal, will give the branch address. Okay, the interrupt vector. Okay, interrupt vector is sent by the interrupt source. Okay, so this is vectored interrupt. So priority interrupt is a system that establishes priority over various sources to determine which condition to be served first when 2 or more requests arrive simultaneously. Okay, when 2 or more interrupt requests arrive simultaneously, the CPU has to decide which one to be served first. So it need to assign some priority. Okay, so when 2 devices interrupt the computer at the same time, the computer serves the device with the higher priority first. Which particular device get the higher priority? Higher priority is assigned to request, which if delayed could have serious consequences. There may be some interrupts that need to be serviced immediately. Otherwise, it damages the process the CPU is doing. Okay, higher priority is assigned to request, which if delayed could have serious consequences. or it may be given to assigned to devices with high speed transfer. Some interrupt initiated device may perform the job fast. Okay, so if that is finished, high speed transfer is done, and then the low speed transfer can be taken care. Okay, so priorities assigned. CPU sets the priority, okay, based on these. Okay, there are different interrupts coming at the same time, so it need to be, okay, which particular interrupt is immediate, need to be served immediately. Okay, so establishing the priority of simultaneous interrupt can be done by two methods, either by software or by hardware. Polling is the method that uses software, okay, to establish the priority. And there are two other methods, daisy chain and parallel priority. These methods uses hardware to establish the priority of simultaneous interrupts. Okay, so using these methods, priority is assigned to interrupts, and based on the priority, the CPU, okay, in that order, the CPU executes that or service the interrupts. This method is priority interrupt. So one of the priority interrupt method that uses software, okay, to establish priority is polling. How this polling is done? When the interrupt request is given to the CPU, it stops its process and it branches to one address. Okay, there is a common address. Let's say in memory, one particular address is assigned to this. Every interrupt service routine will have different address. But initially, there is a initial service routine. Okay, it uses this polling method, executes this initial service routine that is stored at a common location. Okay, at this particular location, we have initial service routine. Okay, so in the this is executed. Okay, so in this address we have set of instructions. Okay, the initial service routine. These instructions are written in a way to poll the devices. Okay, let's say device 1, device 2, and device 3. Okay, send interrupts 1, interrupt 2, and interrupt 3 to CPU. So the CPU need to find the device to serve first. Okay, somehow, the particular device need to be identified. Okay, to which the CPU need to serve first. Which particular interrupt service routine need to be executed first. So which particular interrupt service routine need to be finished, executed first. Okay, to decide that, in this polling method, this particular set of instructions, okay, the control is branched to this address, and here we will have initial service routine, and it tests all the devices. Okay, the instructions written in these initial service routine test all the devices and choose a device that has the highest priority. Okay, that is what is polling. This routine tests all the devices one by one in sequence, and one device is chosen for the CPUs to serve first. The control branches to that address. Okay, there are three interrupt service routines. ISR, interrupt service routine 1, here in one particular address, ISR 2 and ISR 3, okay, in memory, stored in different locations. So if ISR 2 was chosen, okay, based on this set of instruction, this device 2 was chosen. Okay, so the control branches to this address and execute these instructions. Okay, finish this interrupt service routine instructions, and then the next device, which gets the next priority. So this way of testing the devices for prioritizing, okay, for serving the interrupt is called polling. Okay, all the devices are tested in sequence, and the device, okay, that need to be served first is identified. This way of identifying the devices among many devices that initiates the interrupt is called polling. Okay, but the disadvantage here is when there are many devices, more time is taken to test these devices. We'll learn about the other methods, daisy chain and parallel priority in the next class. Have you understood this? Any doubts here? Understood, fine. So we have discussed about the three modes of transfer. Programmed IO, the transfer is initiated by the execution of instructions. Okay, here the disadvantages, it is time consuming because CPU need to wait, okay, for the IO device to be ready to transfer. So instead of making the CPU wait, okay, the second method is interrupt initiated IO. CPU can continue with the process it's doing, and whenever the device is ready, the interrupt signal is sent to the CPU so that it can execute the interrupt. Yes. You want me to repeat polling topic? Okay, I'm coming to that. Is and direct memory access. Here the transfer is between the device and directly to memory. Okay, the interface transfers data into and out of memory. So it is direct memory access. And we have seen this example of programmed IO and interrupt initiated IO. Okay, there are two methods for choosing the branch address. One is non-vectored interrupt. It is the fixed one particular memory location is used to store the interrupt service routine. Okay, so whenever there is an interrupt, the control branches to that location only to serve the device that has initiated the interrupt. And vectored interrupt, in this, the branch address is not in a fixed location in memory. The branch address is supplied by the interrupt source. Okay, the device that initiates the interrupt also supplies the branch address, okay, where that interrupt service routine is stored in memory. This branch address we call interrupt vector. And priority interrupt, okay, this is a method used when there are many devices, okay, that request a CPU to serve at the same time. Okay, the many devices that initiates interrupt to CPU at the same time. So CPU need to order the devices in based on the priority. Okay, so how the priority is assigned? Okay, based on the request. It serves the request first, that if delayed could have serious consequences, or the devices, okay, that has performs with high speed. Okay, that is served first. And for establishing this priority, okay, over many devices that initiates the interrupt simultaneously, it can be done by software or hardware. Okay, so the method that uses software to establish priority of simultaneous interrupt is polling. So polling is choosing among many devices, okay, to serve, okay, which particular device to be served first. The devices are tested by using this initial service routine. Okay, let's say device 1, device 2, and device 3 are initiating interrupts. Okay, so the CPU has to execute this initial service routine. Okay, we have a separate part of this service routine, initial service routine. So all the interrupts are taken to this routine. So this decides which particular device to be served first. How it does, some instructions are written here, okay, that test the devices. That is done based on how these instructions are written. So high speed devices may be identified and considered for servicing first. Okay, that depends on how the instructions are written in the initial service routine. Some protocol is used to test the devices. Once the devices are tested and identified, device will be served first. So this way of testing the devices in sequence, okay, for servicing in the order is called polling. Okay, so here there is one common branch address for all interrupts. That is this address, okay, where this initial service routine is stored. All the interrupts are taken to this routine. The program that takes care of interrupts begins at that address and polls the interrupt sources in sequence. Okay, what this program does, this is a program that takes care of interrupts, right? Initial service routine. Okay, so it polls the interrupt sources in sequence. Thus, the initial service routine for all interrupt tests the interrupt sources in sequence and branches to one of many possible service routines. Okay, once the testing is done, okay, the device that has to be served first is identified. This polling, by polling, it is identified, and then that is served. But here the disadvantage we discussed is polling takes a lot of time because every device need to be tested one by one in sequence. It takes more time than the time available to service the IO device. Yes, is this clear? Okay.